Welcome to the Mother-Daughter ISH podcast. It's your mama's favorite podcast.
And the podcast your daughter always wanted.
This is Miss Dawn.
And Angelique.
From the 713. Houston, y'all. Get connected and stay connected weekly as new shows debut on Sunday, Wednesday, and please check out our Saturday Out and About showcases.
Enjoy the show. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, and tell every woman on the planet that you know about our show.
Here's our show for today. Hey ladies, this is your official invitation to join us on the Winner's Circle Cruise in January. We're going to meet in Fort Lauderdale and go through Key West. And then from Key West, we are going to go over to Bimini, Bahamas. If you have not been to the Bahamas in the last year or so, you've got to go. It is so wonderful, so lovely, so awesome. So far, we've got a good group of ladies that are already signed up. The max to go is 24, unless something wild happens, but 24 is the max. If you received the flyer from me, you know that you need to go ahead and get your deposit down. So we'll spend the first day in Fort Lauderdale getting on the cruise. It'll spend a day on the water. We'll get over to Key West, spend a day there. That'll be day 3. And then for day 4, we will be in Bimini, Bahamas, and we will spend an entire day there where we will just foo-la-la, foo-la-la, foo-la-la. And the final day, we will be back in Fort Lauderdale. I do suggest that you get to Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the night before the cruise. I have seen people be left, so don't be one of them. Now, if you want to leave the day we get back, the cruise is going to be back. By the time you get off, it'll be 10. So if you want to book you a flight, book it after 10 or noon. You just saw the beautiful rooms that we are going to be booking. Yes, every room will have a balcony unless you declare otherwise. Now look at that water. Can you tell me you don't want to be there? Look at all of those good markets. You telling me you don't want to be with the Winner's Circle? The Winner's Circle is for women owners of businesses that want to get together with other women from all over different places to be able to mastermind, to talk about our businesses, to grow, to support one another, to hear others' perspectives on how you can do things different in your business to be the best business and to grow your business. Anything that you can't talk about with other people, this is a great time. Join us on the Winner's Circle Cruise. Hey, mothers and daughters, back again with an amazing conversation today. And today we have Miss Leela Madan, and she's with Madan Law PLLC. And we are going to specifically talk about trademark and then some of the other matters that she handles at her law firm. Thank you, Miss Madan, for being here today.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks for having me today. Happy to be here.
Oh, good. You know, I was so impressed, in case I probably already said this, but I'm going to say it again anyway. I was so impressed with the talk that you had about trademark when you came to the Sci Fair Chamber that I thought to myself, oh my gosh, she'd make a great interview for Mother-Daughter ISH podcast, because I'm always trying to show the moms something. Mothers and daughters, I'm always trying to teach them something, and I think it's just best to come from your mouth so that they can hear it from the expert that does it in that field. So thank you for giving us such a great talk at the chamber. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm glad that we were able to connect after that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thank you for having me today. Both speaking at the chamber and this are great opportunities for me. And I'm honored that you thought to invite me here today.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to trademark, what would you say are like the top 3 questions that a new person comes to you that's like, I think I'm supposed to trademark, but I don't know what I'm supposed to trademark or why I'm supposed to trademark? What's kind of the conversation there? Because a lot of people think that trademarking is for Pepsi and Coke and big names like that.
So I think the number one question people have is, first of all, do I have something that could be a trademark, right? Because like you said, a lot of people have this misconception that IP is only for large companies, but that's really not true. I think every company has IP and every company has a company name. And I think every company name is a trademark. So, of course, there are exceptions to that. But in general, if you even have a company name, you probably have something that is functioning as a trademark, and we could register that with the USPTO. Yeah. The second question that people ask me is, how much does it cost?
Yeah.
And I know that's always
not the first question.
it's up there, right? there's a lot of misinformation on the internet, and there's a lot of confusing companies that'll promise you the world. They'll say, "Oh, I'll do your trademark for $99." And, I mean, it's really wild out there. So you have to be super careful. And the way my law firm does pricing is we just do a flat fee, because I understand that the idea of working with a lawyer can be intimidating,
Yeah.
and the idea of paying an attorney can be so scary, especially when they talk about this thing called the billable hour, right? Like, oh
Right.
my God, well, how many hours is it going to take? And what's the rate per hour? And,
Right.
what if you bill 10 hours and I don't know, and now I'm on the hook to pay this? It's like so scary for people. So
Right.
at our firm, we do trademarks for a flat fee, total transparency, where it's just like, this is our fee, start to finish, out the door price, no surprises, no billable hours. We won't even pay a USPTO fee without talking to you about it first and getting your authorization.
Right.
And the fee that we charge depends on who you are, because we have discounts for nonprofits. I know you work with a lot of nonprofits. That's why I mentioned that. We have discounts for veteran-owned businesses and women-owned businesses and all sorts, right? So, that's probably the second most asked question that I get. And then the third question that people come to me with all the time is they say, I've already looked it up. I've already run my own search and the name is available. Can we
Right.
just get started? Right. And my answer is no, because I want to search. I want to satisfy with my mind and my eyes that I think it's available, because yes, I trust that you did a search. The USPTO has a publicly available database that everyone can search. I'm sure many of your audience members have poked around in there before. So many do. That's why it's there. But the standard is not whether or not two trademarks are identical, it's whether or not they are confusingly similar.
Right.
And the way that that's determined is based on certain factors outlined by some case law, right? And so the average person who comes to me and says, I've done a search, has probably not read that case and probably doesn't even know what those factors are. And so I think that, one of the most important things you can do is, especially if an attorney like me is willing to do it for free,
Right.
is have one of us run a quick search and satisfy for ourselves, should you even file this application? Because once you file the application, that filing fee is not refundable. And, if you do file a trademark application for something that's too similar to someone else's, it's like waving a big flag in the air saying, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing, come get me, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the third thing is those people who come to me and say, I already know it's available. Let's rock and roll. Can we start? And I always gotta gently say no.
I can understand that. And you said something right there that was so important about letting you do your due diligence, because just because you searched 4 months ago and there was nothing there, we don't know what's happening today. Someone could have just filed something, a month ago, 3 months after you looked, and now there's something available. So, that's really, really important. Have you ever had anyone that came to you and you said, what do you want to trademark the name for? And they went like, well, because I just think it's a good idea. But
Yeah.
they don't know that down the road they may want to have a furniture line. They don't know that they may want to have a clothing line. They don't know that they have all these things in mind. What's like the best advice for people who are confused? Like, well, I don't know what I want to do with it, but I just know I don't want anybody else to do anything with it.
Yeah, yeah, really good point. That does come up all the time. And I want to point out, you made a really important point about, you did a search 4 months ago and maybe someone filed a month ago. I'm
Right.
telling you, people are filing trademark applications all day, every day. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they're hitting submit
Yes.
on trademark applications.
Yes.
So you really, a trademark search is really, truly only good as of the day it's performed. And
Exactly.
even that's questionable, because someone could be filing for it at the moment that we're searching, and we would not see that because there's a little bit of a delay between when you hit submit and when it shows up, right? So just want to get that out of the way because you brought it up and I thought it was such a good point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, all the time people come to me and they say, hey, there's this word, I love this word, or I love this phrase, and I just want to own it, right? So the rules around trademark are such that you can only get a trademark registered if you're actually selling a good or a service in connection with that word or phrase or logo, right? So there's a gentleman I've met at a networking event a few times, and he has this really cool logo that he's had designed, and he's got it like inside his jacket and stuff. And he's like, oh, I really want to protect this logo,
Right.
but I'm not selling anything. What do I do? And, you know, at that point, you have to talk to them and say, look, trademarks are really things that are connected to goods or services. So if you're never going to be selling a good or offering a service, then trademark is not the appropriate way to protect what you've created. So for a logo, we can always copyright it. Copyright is perfectly suitable, and it's an excellent way to protect like a graphical representation of something. But unfortunately, if it's just words or a word, then you're not going to be able to copyright that. So you have to get in use in commerce in some way. So one thing I've seen many of my clients do and that I've advised them to do is to create a blog, you know, like providing information and storytelling on a website. That's technically a service.
Social proof, yeah.
And that's a great workaround for how you can kind of check that box. There's this designation that's like providing information about or increasing public awareness of, right? That's something that a lot of nonprofits do. So they'll say like, oh, increasing a public awareness of the importance of autism, or, you know, insert interest of choice, right? So that's always a really creative way to kind of work around without having to have a widget and mass produce some good just to secure ownership of a name.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, in the last 30 days, you have been on my mind, and let me tell you why. From the time that you spoke at the chamber, and it's just, when I hear things and it just makes sense to me, I'm going to always frame it as this makes sense, because 2 and 2 always going to equal 4 for me. So there's a young lady, and I'm going to just tell you, I thought this was the weirdest thing, because I'm always thinking people are going to do the right thing. And so I know that's kind of so not 2024, but that's just the way my brain, I'm just thinking people are going to do the right thing. So there's this young lady who's in politics, and her name is Jasmine Crockett. And she did this really wild phrase about Marjorie Taylor Greene. You heard it, the butch body, whatever. I'm not going to even say it because it's just ridiculous. So anyway, not even 24 hours after she said it, Instagram was blowing up t-shirts, hats, belts, just average Joe who heard it, liked it, and was like, oh my God, that's going to make money. I literally saw people partnering with t-shirt makers to pump out 1,000 t-shirts. I went on Amazon just because I'm nosy like that. I went on Amazon, and Amazon had so many sellers, independent sellers, selling t-shirts that said the BBBBBB. And then I thought, I literally almost jumped out of my skin because I so wanted to find out what was Jasmine Crockett's email to say, girl, I think you better trademark this because 55 other people are. I mean, I was nervous. This has nothing to do with me. And when I say nothing, I mean zero. But I was so, as a business owner, I just was so nervous for her. And then 3 weeks later, she decided she was going to trademark it. How does a scenario like that play out when you're 3 weeks late because somebody else already made the t-shirts, made the hats, put 1,000 of them out on, Amazon and started selling already? How do I rebut that as the original owner? And everybody in the world knows I'm the original owner.
Yeah, that's a really complicated question.
Oh
So
my God, I
there's so
just
many
was so
ways
nervous.
that
I
I
was
could.
sweating for her.
So I definitely, this happens a lot, right? So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were telling the story of the cronut, and it was about the
I remember from
croissant
New York. Yep.
donut, right? And they were interviewing that chef
Yep.
who coined that term, right? And apparently, same thing. Someone went to him after a few weeks and said, hey, you need to get a trademark on cronut, right? And
Yeah.
he filed his trademark application for cronut. And
Right.
just like you said, within 24 hours, all these other cronut applications were in there, and there were cronut
Exactly.
in every city and town, right? And people were selling cronuts, right? And every bakery was calling it a cronut, even though it wasn't the cronut from New York
Right.
City, right?
Right.
So, you know, there are a few different ways that we talk about this. So technically, according to trademark law, the person who gets in use in commerce first technically wins the race. So the person who got it up for sale first on Amazon or however they got it for sale first would technically win that race. Of course, it's more complicated than that. Okay.
Yeah.
If you just put something on the front of a shirt,
Yeah.
that's what we would call merely ornamental. And that's typically not going to rise to the level needed to be in use in commerce for a trademark, right?
Okay.
For clothing, it actually has to be like on the tag of the shirt, like back here
Okay.
in the neck, right? Having it on the front of the shirt is typically not enough to say you got there first. It was, you know, that's what the trademark office would call just merely ornamental design, right? Not
Got it.
necessarily functioning as a trademark. So, um, you know, it's who got it in use as a trademark first, and
Mhm.
then in connection with what goods or what services, right? So,
Okay.
you know, there's so many people, like, look at all of these printifies and, you know, all of these drop ship companies where
Yes.
you just
Yes.
upload your design and then someone buys it and they just make the shirt for you and it's out the door.
Right.
You know, that would, I would argue, is not going to rise to the level needed to create trademark rights to the phrase.
Ah,
You know, really the way to own the phrase and all of that is to like put it on the banner of your website and then have a whole bunch of goods for sale underneath. Put it on the neck of the shirt where nobody can see it.
that can
You know,
get tricky.
like think about a clothing line,
Yeah,
right?
online, not just, oh, I'm in my back room printing t-shirts and I'm just gonna put your phrase on there or whatever. You know,
Right.
I was wondering about that because to me it gets really tricky, especially when you know where it originated from. Like I know the singer Doja Cat, she did a song, I Said What I Said. Well, that came from Nene from Atlanta Housewives, and they had a little bit of problem with that because everybody in the world knows that Nene said this on the Atlanta Housewives. See, I follow really weird business things like that. Like I don't watch Atlanta Housewives and I don't listen to Doja Cat's music, but when it came to the business end of the business, I was like, that's interesting because I've noticed too with Drake and Kendrick Lamar going back and forth. I've noticed people have t-shirts that say not like us or they not like us or whatever. I'm like, do y'all not have any morals that you wouldn't use somebody else's wording? And that's the part I will tell you. The wording gets tricky to me. When you start trademarking things with a word and you're not using it, like you said, on a clothing line or goods or something, that gets really tricky. My brain goes like, but everybody says that word or anybody can
Right.
say that word. It's really tricky.
It is tricky. And, you know, thinking about an expression like I said what I said, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, everybody kind of says that, right? Like you know,
Yeah.
if someone asks me, I'll say I said what I said, you know, if I have to, right?
Yeah.
That's a common expression.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone could copyright that phrase. Now,
Okay.
maybe Doja Cat got a copyright for the lyrics of her song as a whole, and probably for the musical recording and or
She
music
said that she got it.
video.
She admitted that she got it from hearing Nene said it.
But
And
she's not gonna, but no
it's
one's gonna be
inspired.
able to, yeah, but no
Yeah.
one's gonna be able to own, I said what I said as
I
a
just don't even
copyright,
understand it. Yeah.
right? So as a copyright, those four words, just but I said what I said, those five words are not gonna be copyrightable on their own. It's just too minimal, right? But embedded in a song, sure, copyright that all day.
Okay.
Those lyrics, copyrightable, the sound recording, copyrightable. But if we were to put I said what I said on the front of a shirt, again, probably not going to rise to the level of a trademark unless you put it on the banner of your website
Right.
and start selling goods underneath it. Like, and that could be something that people do, you know. I think artists, they often use their lyrics in a way that's functioning as a trademark.
Yeah.
And really that's what it is whatever it is, whether it's a design, a phrase, a word, if it's functioning as a trademark, meaning that consumers see it and they know where it came from. Like you said, oh, I know that I said what I said came from Nene from the Real Housewives of Atlanta, right? That's an example of a trademark, right? When someone in a consumer's mind identifies a phrase, a word, a design as being a source or originating from someone, that is when it is a trademark. So it's possible that Nene could say, that's my trademark, right? And she could potentially register that in some way, but if she's not going to be selling some goods like a coffee cup with it on it or something, then she's going to have to get creative and have someone like me kind of advise her and say, okay, let's get creative here. How can we protect this?
Well, Leela, I'm going to have to fan myself before I ask this next question because this runs my blood pressure up a little bit.
Oh no, I'm scared.
Let's talk about how AI is playing a role in all of this, because people are going to AI and they're asking AI to create all of these great things. I'm always nervous that what if you're sitting at your desk asking AI, blah, 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 and I'm sitting over here and Katie asking AI, is it going to give us the same answer? And then we AI makes me so nervous because people are writing whole books and copywriting them, saying that it's their intellectual property. Folks are creating clothing lines with, phrases and things like that using AI. And the reason I know this is true because I've created stickers, because I go to a different car show every 2 years, and it's like a 3-week road trip, and we all sell some kind of little trinkets or gift buttons away and all this stuff. And so I'll go to AI and ask it to, give me some cool phrases that pertain to Mini Coopers, and it'll give me these crazy things, and I'll create stickers and things. And I've got people all over the world with my stickers on their cars because I give away about 5,000 stickers every 2 years. How does AI play a role in this, or are we just gonna have to keep it? What's that word? I can't think of the word right now, but it's kind of like we're just gonna have to trust your word that you created it in your own brain. Like, I'm sure you ask those questions when your clients come to you, like, is this your brainchild? Do you ask those questions?
I do. And I'll tell you exactly why. So your first question was, if you're asking AI something and I'm asking AI something, are we going to get the same answer? So I think look, I'm no AI expert, but I think that the way these large language models work, these LLMs, I think that even if you ask the same question as I do, I think we'll get different answers. Okay.
Even
And
if
then
we ask it the same way.
I think so, yeah, because it's designed not to infringe on itself or other people. And so it's always going to give it to you differently.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding. I could be wrong. That's my disclaimer. I could be wrong.
Okay.
The second question you asked is about writing a book, or it wasn't really a question, but the topic of conversation here is that if you use AI to write a book, can you copyright it? The answer is no, you're not supposed to. So if AI is used, I just wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago. In the copyright world, an author must be a human. So if AI wrote your song lyrics or wrote your book, you cannot copyright that. Even if you lie and say that you created it with your brain and you get a copyright registration and then you try to sue someone for copyright infringement, they're going to figure it out, right? Technology is such that you can figure out nowadays when something is created by AI, and they'll invalidate your copyright once they figure that out, right? Yeah, you can lie to the Copyright Office and say, I made it, but that's what we call fraud, right? And when you commit fraud on the Copyright Office or the USPTO, your prize is that your patent, your trademark, or your copyright is going to be invalidated, right? Okay, so for copyright, the author must be human, gotta be. And for patent, the inventor must be human. So a lot of people right now are using AI to code software. And a lot of people then want that software to be patented, right? And or copyrighted. And you cannot get a copyright or a patent on software code that is coded by a computer. You cannot. It has to be done by a human. I have done copyright applications for software applications, and the Copyright Office will contact me and say, was this coded by a human? And we have to submit a sworn declaration saying that this was coded by a human. And that's the only way they'll grant that copyright registration. And like I said, if you lie and you commit fraud, then your prize for that will be, as soon as you try to enforce it against someone, it will be invalidated and you will have wasted your time and money on the copyright and your time and money on the lawsuit trying to sue them. And at the end of the day, you will have nothing to show for it. So it's really not a good idea. If you really want to own something, you can't use AI to create it.
Yeah, and you know, that's happening a lot in the music world, because what I've been seeing a lot of the entertainers do is they create music and they just put it up on SoundCloud or wherever they can make a little quick money, or they perform it in, you know, wherever, clubs or at festivals, parties or whatever, and they just don't copyright it. They're just known for that particular music. And I don't think it's right, because what I've also been seeing is people using AI for lyrics, but then also using um singers who are no longer alive and taking their voice, putting it into the AI machine and having them to sing it as if it's them. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
my brain goes like, how is this even, forget about the morals, how is it even legal
Well,
to
okay, gosh,
do
you are
something?
asking, you just asked the most complicated questions.
I told you, this keeps me up at
That's so funny. So, I just heard on the radio they did that Johnny Cash has released a new album.
okay.
Mhm. And he's been dead for 30 years, right? Or
I was
however
like,
long.
are you talking Johnny Cash Jr. or something? Because I know he's been okay.
But what happened was, yes, they used AI to generate his voice, but it was his original lyrics from some songbook that he had written back in the day, right? And it was done by his heirs, right? By his son, by John Cash Jr. or whatever his name is. And so the copyright in that, the copyright in the lyrics, because they were actually penned by Johnny Cash himself,
Right.
are valid. We can get copyright for those. His heirs will own that, right? But the sound recording of an AI generated version of his voice, not going to be copyrightable because it's generated by AI, and copyright can only be achieved by a human author, right? And not AI. So that scenario was okay because that was done by his heirs, who I assume own his name, image, and likeness and the rights to his voice and his lyrics and all of that, right? So in that scenario, I think that was all good. However, if you or I were to use AI to generate Johnny Cash singing a song that we wrote, that would be a violation of their rights, right? Because that would be we would be using his likeness and maybe his name, but he's got such a distinct voice, right?
Right.
So if we were to do that, there was an app recently. Sorry, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was OpenAI. No, it wasn't OpenAI. Anyway, somebody used Scarlett Johansson's voice as the voice of like an app, and they actually had reached out to her to ask her for permission, and she said no. She declined. She said, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want you using my voice. So what they did was they proceeded to use AI to create a voice that sounded just like hers, to the point where people were confused and were thinking it was her.
Yeah.
And so she actually was able to, I think, threaten to sue. I don't know if she actually sued. Sorry, I can't remember the exact details, but she was able to get them to stop using that voice in their software because it was her likeness, even though it was generated by an AI. So you see the
her core
distinction.
audience, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and people were confused. They thought it really was her.
Now, let me ask you something, because 2024, this year, has shown us that pretty much anything goes. Thinking of the future, do you think the language in this must be a human? Do you think that's going to change? Since look at the big strike that they had in Hollywood. And the big core thing is that they want to be able to take the likeness and the voices and everything, but not hire the actual human. Because I just found out that Tyler Perry, see, I follow this business stuff, I'm telling you, and I don't watch his movies either, but I'm going to tell you the business end. He canceled a $800 million studio that he was going to build, because now they have created a software that you can talk into the software and develop your entire movie. And it will, like, if you say it's a rainy day and attorney Leela Madan is sitting in the front of her window with a white shirt on and black glasses, and she's talking about XYZ, it delivers. You your voice and whatever conversation is supposed to be there. So he canceled from building his $800 million studio that he was getting ready to break ground on because this new software is going to deliver everything. And he never has to hire anybody ever. You know, he already doesn't hire anybody to do any writing for him. Now he won't have to hire any humans to do anything for him. So do you think this human language is going to eventually get to be a slippery slope till it disappears?
I think it's
It's
going to be
going
a
to
real
benefit those
problem.
who are making money on it. So,
So, I think it will become a real problem for so many reasons.
yeah.
First and foremost, for using people's name, image, and likeness without their permission. Second, it's going to eliminate jobs. Third, do you know how much energy it takes to run that type of a query into one of those LLMs? If you were to input one of those queries and say, for example, I run a Google search for, podcast questions, right? There's a certain amount of energy that the Google servers have to use to produce the output, right?
Right.
In an LLM, if you were to ask it to generate an image, or like you said, a movie of me sitting in the rain in front of a window with my glasses talking about whatever I'm talking about, the amount of energy currently that would take is like astronomical. It would be like 800 million times as much energy required to run that search and produce those outputs compared to just running a Google search. So we're going to have a real environmental problem where these data centers are going to require so much electricity to run them and so much water to cool them. And especially as the earth is getting hotter, it will take more to keep them cool. So we're going to have a real problem here in many different ways. So,
People are preparing for that because there's a lot of data centers that are popping up in different.
They are.
I was watching a show the other day, and it's a show about these guys. They find all these abandoned homes in areas, and they're like, went to this area that had 300 homes in it, and just all of a sudden, everybody left. But everybody was offered so many millions of dollars for their home. But what's happening is that they're getting ready to build a data center there. And so that freaked me out because I thought, okay, now the 5G makes sense. Now all the data centers popping up in these, deserted areas. All of this is starting to really make sense. Now, in 2018, when I took my son to Japan, they were already on 12G. That was in 2018 when I was there. I don't even know what they're on now, but in 2018, they were on 12G because when I walked into a studio, I was like, oh my God, I felt like I could take my legs and walk into the TV screen. It was just that real. So
Wow.
I think it's being prepared because this data center right now is being built that's supposed the numbers that they said it was supposed to hold. My brain didn't even compute. I just went like, oh my gosh.
Well, they're going to need it. If they're going to be
They're
using
gonna
AI
need
to
it.
generate videos and images the way that you just described,
Yeah.
then they're going to need it, and they're going to need a lot of them.
And you know what? I
Um,
didn't even think about it from that aspect of what you're saying is the energy that it takes to be able to do this. Because back, I'll say maybe 10 years ago when all of this was getting like out of hand back then, people were talking about your digital footprint. So when you just said that, all I could think about was, ooh, what a digital footprint that is. Ooh, how does that impact the environment? Ooh, my brain went.
Yeah, I just read an article about it yesterday and it got my gears turning on it too. I hadn't thought about that piece of it, but I read an article and it was talking about how even just generating one image is, 800 times X, and generating a video is 808 million X. It's going to have a really big impact on things. Now, just to answer your real question here is that requirement of a human author or human inventor going to go away? The USPTO and the US Copyright Office have signaled to us that that will not be going away, that they will still be requiring human authorship and or inventorship, right? There was actually a case where a guy had used AI to generate an image, and it was according to a very detailed prompt that he gave it, saying, make it look like watercolor and make it this scene with these trees and make it that he was very specific with what he wanted. And then he had tried to register that image as a copyright, and the Copyright Office told him no. They refused his application. And I guess this guy had enough desire and money to file a lawsuit because he sued the Copyright Office
Oh my
to
gosh.
to compel them to give him a copyright registration for his picture that he had created using AI. And the Copyright Office said no. In court, they won. And so that standard is firm, saying that the author must be human. And after that, there have been opinions and notices. And right now, word on the street is that that requirement will stand.
How did they know that it was AI generated and not his computer generated? Because, you know, they have all these computers you can paint and draw. How did they know?
I think he told them. I think he
Okay,
declared
at
it.
least he was on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Well,
he
no,
told
that's
them.
good. That's good. Well, I'm telling you, a lot of this has really nothing to do with me, but it just, on the business end of it, it just boggles my mind. And when I start asking questions, and you know, it's really one of the reasons I don't use any of the photo AI softwares, because the word perpetuity freaks me out as well. If I'm putting my photo in there and I want to make myself a queen and blah 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 blah, because I wanted to create this image, and when I read, in order to sign up, you give us into perpetuity to use your image. And
Mhm.
and last week it made sense to me why that language was put there, because Meta announced that they're getting ready to start training their AI off of things that we put on Instagram and Facebook,
Yeah.
from
Oh,
our
yeah.
face, from our image, from our inflections that we use in our words. And here's the funny thing. They say, oh, but if you want to opt out of it, do this, 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 and this. Well, I did this, this, and this. And then when you get down to actually opt out, it doesn't allow you to. I did it with a whole group on a forum. We had 10 people here and we all had the instructions, and
Oh my
every
God.
one of us, and we're in different states. Nobody was in Texas. Nobody was in Missouri. Everybody get to the last point, and where it says you have to explain why you want to opt out, it didn't give you an option.
Wow. That's
And so I
wild.
thought to myself, I don't know how that's, again, I'm back to the, how's that legal? There's a lot
Right.
of things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what keeps me up at night, because you're an attorney. What keeps me up at night is these trademark things and these words that people want to trademark. That keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night is, how is it legal that the FDA allows certain foods on the food shelves and drinks on the food shelves? What keeps me up at night is the clothing that's being made so cheap with all the dyes that interrupts our bodies on a cellular level. You know, those are things that keep me up at night, that have to do with our safety as we the people. Those type of things really keep me up at night, and it keeps me up to the point where the other day I was literally Googling who funds the FDA. I won't even say who funds it because my blood pressure is going to go up again. But then I said, oh, after I did my whole little, I said, oh, so this is why we the people could never sue the FDA, because they're backed by everybody that has way more money than everybody on the planet. And I thought to myself, well, that's not fair. It's kind of reminded me, it kind of reminded me of the Meta thing, where you can't, they tell you, oh, you can opt out, no problem, but you can't.
Right.
You can't sue
Well,
them.
you can opt out by not using their platform, by deleting your account and
Absolutely, but if you've already been using it,
right.
it never really deletes, by the way.
So, you remember a couple of years ago, there was that fad where you would put your image in and it would age you and make you look like you were like 80 or
Oh,
something. And
I
everyone was
remember, because I
posting.
did not do that, because I
I
felt like,
didn't do it either because
felt
I
like
didn't
it
want
was
to
a
give
trick.
them my picture.
Exactly. I felt like it was a trick and a setup, and I went, I'm not doing that. And I looked at everybody else and I thought, well, why would you even want to do that anyway? And I said, I'm not doing that. Oh no, but
Yeah, I didn't
that
do
went
it
on
because
for months and months and months. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
I didn't want to do it either. I didn't want to click that button saying you could use my image in perpetuity, like you said. I agree with that. The deal with have you seen Netflix, the show Black Mirror?
Yes, you and I spoke about it in when you did your talk at the chamber, and I raised my hand and I said, remember on Black Mirror when the girl got the cell phone and she approved of all her images, and then
Well,
she
that's what I
on
just, well,
Netflix?
I want to talk about that briefly. So, you a second ago said, how can they do that? How can Meta do that? You said Meta is saying that they're going to start training on our images and our
Because they gave us a free
inflections.
platform to do what we wanted to do.
The
We didn't put
answer,
in.
though, the answer is when you sign up, you accept their terms and conditions. And somewhere buried in those terms and conditions, you are consenting
Yep.
to their using your data for that purpose. Now,
Just like we do on these phones.
And everything in our lives.
Everything.
Everything in our lives. Just to do this Zoom, we had to accept the Zoom terms and conditions,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So, the, shoot, I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about
Oh,
Black Mirror and how you give your
yeah.
consent without knowing
So,
you've really given your consent.
yeah, so I was gonna say that I actually had a chance to speak on this topic last week
Okay.
and present to a group where we talked about accepting the terms and conditions and sorry, I lost my train of thought. It was a really good point. Somebody asked me a question. It'll come to me. Let's keep moving.
Okay. So yeah, so again, those and I'm always nervous now, even with the phones and everything, because I'm like, yeah, I get it. Because when I got my iPhone, this last one, my iPhone 13, I remember I told the lady in the store, I said, but what if I don't want to accept the terms and conditions? She said, well, then you can't download anything, won't let you finish the setup.
Right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, so you really don't have a choice other than to don't use their product.
I realized what I wanted to say. This is so important. Okay, so we were talking about accepting the terms and conditions, and somebody brought up the question, is there ever going to be, and as an attorney, is there ever going to be an ethical duty to not put terms like that into the terms and conditions because we know that the users are not going to use it, right? So currently there is talking about ethics and like the ethical duties that attorneys have. What we have to do is we represent our clients and we have to represent our client's best interest. And so if my client is Meta and my task is to draft the terms and conditions because they want to gather our data and use it for their purposes and get our likeness and get our inflections and study it and then use it for some output, and you are my client and that is your goal, then I have an ethical duty to represent you in achieving that goal, right? So the question was, is there ever going to be an ethical duty for an attorney to not do that and to actually do what's for the greater good rather than what your client is asking you to do? Now, I will say there was an instance not long ago, maybe 2 months ago, I had a client who wanted to put some very toothy terms and conditions into their contract.
Okay.
And I told them, I said, if that's what you want me to put in there, I will put it in there. But I strongly recommend you don't do that because as soon as you enforce this against someone, you're going to have a lot of backlash.
Right.
That person's going to post about it on social media. They're going to give you a bad review. They're going to, yes, legally, we can put that term in your contract. However, I don't personally think it's a good business decision because as soon as you do it, it will have bad consequences for you. And I can foresee that happening. So it's your call, whatever you want. If you want it in there, I'll put it in there. If you don't, we won't. And at the end of the day, the client took my advice and we didn't put it in. But, there's this kind of tug and pull where you have to say, what is ethical? What is the right thing to do? And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some big lawsuit like the one in Black Mirror, Joan is Awful, where the girl's likeness is taken in all of her private conversations, like even her conversation with her attorney.
Yes.
Recorded and put on a show, which otherwise would have been protected by attorney-client privilege. So my question is, if every time I have a consultation with a client, because my watch is on my wrist, am I breaching attorney-client relationship because and privilege because this is on my watch, or because my phone is on the table, or because my computer has a microphone in it?
Oh, one more thing that's gonna keep me up at night.
Or my security camera has a microphone in it because of all of these devices. Is that going to now call into question the privilege and confidentiality that that my client enjoys when they speak with their attorney?
Right.
These are valid questions.
How do you handle that though as an attorney knowing this?
Well, right now it's not happening, right? But that's what Black Mirror portrays is the scenario where because you have the Netflix app downloaded on your phone and you accepted their terms and conditions, they're allowed to record your conversations, including one with an attorney.
So
right?
I'm taking it that you don't think they're already doing that.
They might be.
Well, every time I mention something, I end up with it on my phone.
That's right.
If 5 minutes ago I was just talking about peanuts, when I get to my Instagram and I open it up on my thing, even if I've had it off my iPad, something about peanuts is going to show up.
Of
So it's very,
course, yeah.
very, very weird. I was sitting at my mom's house one day and we were just talking, and she was watching her TV show or whatever. And then we talked about something. And then 5 minutes later, a commercial came on TV and we just looked at each other.
Yeah, we were talking about a movie at the gym the other day, and I don't think any of us had our phones in the room, but we had our watches. And then next thing you know, the little pieces of clips from that movie were showing up on our Instagram feeds.
Exactly.
And it
So
was an old movie. It was not one that would just be popping
promoted
up.
today, right, right. So what other things do you handle at your law firm? Boy, we have talked about this. I could talk about it all day, and I don't know why, but I find it fascinating. I find it interesting. I find it to be a slippery slope of all kinds of things. It makes me even ask more and more questions because I talk to people about business on a daily basis, and there's just things that they don't think about or know how to ask, but they think they want one thing, but they don't even know the implications of how that happens. So what other ways do you help your clients at your law firm?
So our specialty is intellectual property. So that means patents, trademarks, and copyrights.
Okay.
And we specifically specialize in helping people file those applications with the government to get those things registered. So we'll file patent applications, we'll file trademark applications, and we'll file copyright applications. In addition to that, I also form LLCs and I'll draft operating agreements for, like, if you have a 2-member LLC, because there are 2 of you who want to go into business together, we'll do an operating agreement that'll be kind of like your company agreement to say how decisions are made and who can take out a loan in the name of the business and who can
Right.
sign a contract, etc. We also do a lot of licensing agreements. So
Okay.
like if you have a brand and you want to license it to someone else so that they
Okay.
can scale up and use your name or your IP without you having to be the one to do it, kind of like a franchise, but not the level of a franchise.
Yeah.
We do a lot of licensing deals. I've got a client here in town. They run a nutritional supplement shop, and
Hmm.
they want to scale up, but they don't want to have to do it themselves. So we're doing license agreements so that other people can use their name and their logo and their
Okay.
business models and take advantage of, you know, benefits that they've already figured out because they've been running it for a while, so we'll draft license agreements for, shops like that, restaurants. We just did one for a restaurant who wants to open up multiple locations.
Wonderful.
Things like that are really our sweet spot.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, because I have a client that wants to franchise her childcare center. Would that be paperwork that you would put together as well?
I don't do franchises, but I would recommend she speak. I could talk to her. We have done license agreements for childcare centers in the past.
Uh-huh.
There is a difference between licensing and franchising. They're very similar, but the biggest difference is control. So
Right.
if you think about when you go into, say, McDonald's, right? The menu is the same, they're wearing the same hats, they're wearing the same shirts, like it is uniform. Everything is the same. That's the
Right.
example of a franchise, right?
Right.
A license, on the other hand, is where you just license the name. Okay, yeah, you can use my name, but you don't have
To
to
make
all
your
wear the
own
same
rules.
color
Okay.
shirts, and you don't have to paint the walls the same color, and do all the things so that it's like super standard. What you give up is an element of control. And
Right.
so if you're willing to do that, so for example, if you've got a preschool and it's called Wonder Woman's Preschool, and there's someone in Dallas who wants to be Wonder Woman's preschool, they could reach out to you and you could license to them. Well, probably that's a bad example because Wonder Woman's a trademark that's owned by somebody else, but you get my
Yes.
drift, right?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just looking at my desk and I've got a Wonder Woman here, so that's what I said.
You got Wonder
Um,
Woman and I got Incredible Hulk. Boy, we're bad.
yeah, I'm rolling with it here. So, we gotta, so what we could do is we could say, okay, Dallas, you can be Wonder Woman Dallas. And this is our name and our logo that you have to use, but we're not going to tell you what hours to keep. And we're not going to tell you what color shirts your employees have to wear. And we're not going to tell you what part of town you got to be in. Like, you could kind of come up with all of that, but you are going to pay us for the right to use our name and our logo.
Okay.
Make
I like that.
make
Okay.
sense?
That makes much sense. Thank you so much, Miss Leela, for being here today. Again, you fascinated me with your talk at the chamber, and I thought I've got to, share what she does with other people. And I thank you so much for just being so knowledgeable and just so kind about it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I feel like you and I could just talk for hours.
I think so too, and that's scary because I can go. Anything you'd like to leave us with?
No, I think that's it. Just thank you so much for having me today. It's been a real pleasure.
You are so welcome. All right, mothers and daughters, if you want to reach out to Miss Leela Madan at her law firm, everything's going to be in the description bar, her social media, her website, the name of her company, phone number, address. If you are in the Houston area, especially, definitely reach out to her. And until next time, bye, Leela. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Until next time.
Hey, ladies, this is your official invitation to join us on the Winner's Circle Cruise in January. We're going to meet in Fort Lauderdale and go through Key West. And then from Key West, we are going to go over to Bimini, Bahamas. If you have not been to the Bahamas in the last year or so, you've got to go. It is so wonderful, so lovely, so awesome. So far, we've got a good group of ladies that are already signed up. The max to go is 24, unless something wild happens, but 24 is the max. If you received the flyer from me, you know that you need to go ahead and get your deposit down. So we'll spend the first day in Fort Lauderdale getting on the cruise. It'll spend a day on the water. We'll get over to Key West, spend a day there. That'll be day 3. And then for day 4, we will be in Bimini, Bahamas, and we will spend an entire day there where we will just foo-la-la, foo-la-la, foo-la-la. And the final day, we will be back in Fort Lauderdale. I do suggest that you get to Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the night before the cruise. I have seen people be left, so don't be one of them. Now, if you want to leave the day we get back, the cruise is going to be back. By the time you get off, it'll be 10. So if you want to book you a flight, book it after 10 or noon. You just saw the beautiful rooms that we are going to be booking. Yes, every room will have a balcony unless you declare otherwise. Now look at that water. Can you tell me you don't want to be there? Look at all those good markets. You telling me you don't want to be with the Winner's Circle? The Winner's Circle is for women owners of businesses that want to get together with other women from all over different places to be able to mastermind, to talk about our businesses, to grow, to support one another, to hear others' perspectives on how you can do things different in your business to be the best business and to grow your business. Anything that you can't talk about with other people, this is a great time. Join us on the Winner's Circle Cruise.